Thank you, Dr. Mumbercat and Dr. Trenholm. I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Courtney Sherlock, a visionary leader and trailblazer in both veterinary and sports sector and a proud entrepreneur from Fall River. Courtney has consistently demonstrated her keen eye for opportunity and her commitment for making a meaningful impact. In 2013, she took her first steps into business ownership by acquiring a stake in a veterinary hospital, and just 2 years later, she took full ownership. Her entrepreneurial journey continued with the establishment of the Village Veterinary Group, which has flourished to include multiple locations across the Halifax regional municipality. Courtney's remarkable achievements in the veterinary field were recognized in 2022 when she was honored as one of Atlantic Canada's top 50 CEOs by Atlantic Business Magazine. But Courtney's ambitions don't stop there. When she crossed paths with Miriam Zittner, co-founder of Atlantic Women's FC, she saw an exciting opportunity to champion women's sports in Canada through Project 8, a groundbreaking initiative to create a professional women's soccer league. Despite having no prior experience in soccer, Courtney's passion for this initiative speaks volumes about her beliefs in the power of sport to uplift women and communities alike. As the newly appointed president and CEO of Atlantic Women's FC, Courtney faces the thrilling challenge of building a team from the ground up, including hiring staff, securing sponsorships, and establishing a home field, all within a tight time frame. Her dedication to this cause is fueled by the knowledge that Canadian women deserve a professional soccer league to call their own, especially after the successes of the national team on the global stage. Please join me in welcoming Courtney Sherlock, a leader who is not only redefining opportunities for women in sports, but is also shaping the future for professional soccer in Canada.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Apologies, I'm pretty under the weather, so if I cough a little bit, apologies to that. So I was asked to be here today to just do a talk, and they let me choose whatever I wanted to talk about. And so I decided to just give a high level, what is my story? Because I don't know about you guys, but I find that often in life I look around the room and I go, who are you? How did you get here? And I wish people had a little thought bubble above their head that told their story, right? What did you do in life that brought you here? What brought you to this place on earth? What brought you to this job? So I'm just gonna give you my history, and then along the way, I'm gonna just share 5 learnings that I think had a big impact on me. I'm going to stick to we're going to keep it positive. There's a ton of mistakes I made and there's a ton of negatives, but we're going to keep it uplifting and positive today and not get too into the weeds of strategy. It's just more about my story and a couple of things I've learned along the way. So maybe there's a few things that you guys can take home and learn from me here. I'm not a professional speaker, so I just put this together for you guys. So if there's anything I missed or you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask me. So I grew up in Lake Fletcher, Nova Scotia, and a great family, oldest of 4. My sister's here today, support, which I appreciate. She's attending the Mount as a graduate student, so it was a great opportunity for me to see her. Good parents. We never wanted for anything, food or shelter, but we certainly didn't have a lot of money, so it was Frenchies and name brand cereal at Christmas. So if I wanted anything, I had to work for it. So I started working when I was in grade 6, grade 7. That was paper route, that was babysitting, and that's how I was able to get anything that I had wanted. I had to earn it. I went to high school at Charles P. Allen. Didn't have a high school out in Fall River at that time, so I had to take the bus. And then I graduated from CPA in '96, and then I went to Dalhousie, and I did my Bachelor of Science at Dalhousie. I know this is the wrong school for that, but that's where I was. And then I went directly from Dalhousie into the Atlantic Veterinary College, which is the only place that Atlantic Canadians can attend veterinary school. So I had to move to PEI for 4 years. And I graduated from there in 2005. I graduated from vet school on a Friday in April, and I started work in Digby, Nova Scotia on a Monday, that following Monday. Back then, back in my day, new graduates couldn't get a job in the city in Halifax. How the times have changed. If I'm looking to hire veterinarians, which I always am because there's never enough, I have to beg and plead and incentivize new graduates to come. That was the first time I was ever thinking about supply and demand. I wanted to live in Nova Scotia. I had to take a less desirable job outside the city where I had to be on call. So this is where I'm just going to share the first lesson that I like to share with entrepreneurs and students that I work with. Picking the right life partner. I know this seems a little bit hokey pokey, but I met my husband when I was 19, got married when I was 22. He's my biggest cheerleader, and he has been the entire time that I have been pursuing my career, which I'll get into here soon. He knows and has known since he met me how driven and goal-oriented I am. So he worked to support me through school, and he followed me to PEI and to Digby and then back to Halifax. And he more than shares equally. We have 3 kids in the household chores and the child care. So I think it's really, really important, especially for women who are goal-oriented, to choose the right life partner. So are they supporting you in what you want to do? Are they holding you down, or are they lifting you up? And are they helping you be a better version of yourself while they also are being better versions of themselves? I am a believer that you can have it all and you can do it all. And you don't have to give up one thing to have another. You can find balance. You can spend time on yourself. You can spend time with your family. You can spend time on your business or on your career. And while having a healthy relationship in a family and while growing yourself in the process. So that was just one of the first lessons that I believe in. After I worked in Digby for about a year, I moved back into Halifax. This is the fall of 2006. And that's when I started working at the Eastern Passage Veterinary Hospital. I was working there full-time, and then I also had part-time jobs. I locumed throughout the city, so filling in when shifts needed to be filled in at other hospitals. But throughout the years, I took on more and more responsibilities at my home hospital in Eastern Passage. And it was in 2012 that I started talking to the current owner, or the previous owner, about business ownership. That's something that had never been an interest of mine. I'd never done anything in education around business ownership. But what I wanted to do, and the reason that I wanted to own a business, was because I wanted to affect change. I wanted to be able to influence what was happening at the business and to be able to implement ideas that I had. I wanted to try and make things better, whether it was operationally, culturally, and of course give myself a chance to have more income. So I started talking about that in 2012, and it was 2013 that I bought 50% of that operating company and the building. So that's Eastern Passage Vet. The business wasn't in great shape, and the partnership wasn't ideal. There was a misalignment on priorities and where time was spent on the business. But there were 2 good things that happened that year. The first is that I took the leap and I bought the business. And the second was that I joined the entrepreneur organization. This is the second lesson that I wanted to share with you guys this morning, which is to try and find yourself a trusted professional support program and support system, because as you go through life, you're going to have professional issues, concerns, troubles. If we don't have a support system, where do we bring those problems? We bring them home. EO, or Entrepreneur Organization, is just one of the many groups that are out there in the world. You can either join one or you can create your own. The EO specifically is international. It's only for people who own businesses. And the way that it works is it's revenue-based. So if you earn more than $1 million a year in revenue in your business, then you can join. And there's an accelerator program, and that's for new business owners. And that is for people who are starting a business and want to grow that business. I'm a mentor in that program. I've been doing that for about 5 years. And it's an excellent way for you to learn about what business ownership is, how to increase your business, and anything to do with running a business. But there's many different ones out there. The reason I wanted to highlight this is because I'm still a member of EO now. It's been over 10 years. And the people in EO are some of my best friends and my biggest supporters. You get put into a forum, which is a group of 6 to 8 people that are business owners, but in a different business than your own. So it could be that they're builders or painters or own radio stations. You just never know what those businesses are going to be. But as a business owner, your challenges are all the same. There's 4 big buckets. It's people, it's cash, it's execution, and strategy. So those are the 4. But you can really learn from people that are in different industries from yourself. Other organizations out there, there's YPO, Young Presidential Organization, there's Tech, there's Wallace McCain's, there's a lot of different ones. So basically my message is just who can you surround yourself with that's going to really support you, that can be trusted, and that you're not going to, people that you can lean on so you're not bringing your challenges from your business home to your family. The other great thing about EO is there's an accountability aspect. How often do we say, oh, I'm going to do this next week, or I'm going to do this next month? And if nobody's holding you accountable, then sometimes you're not as inclined to make sure that you do those things. So that's the other thing that EO will do. So my bonus lesson that I wrote down at the bottom here, if you are in a business and you have a partnership, just make sure you have a shareholders agreement. You'll thank me for that later. It doesn't matter if that partner is your best friend, your brother-in-law, someone that is a student with you. The time to do a shareholders agreement is when you don't have problems. When everything is going great before you start your business and everybody's excited, you go, what happens if? When you don't have a shareholders agreement, it gets a lot more messy. So that's just my bonus message for today. When you are buying out a partner, can be like a divorce from a marriage. So it can sometimes get messy. Having a shareholders agreement is a good thing to have. So continue on my story. From 2015, 2018, I had the one hospital, and I was working double time. I basically had 2 jobs. I worked in the hospital as a veterinarian, and I worked on the hospital or business as an owner. And those are 2 very different things. So when you're thinking about owning or operating a business, you have to think about, what is it that your goal is? Do you want to just create yourself a job and you have a small business, but you work in it, sole proprietor, maybe you have a few employees, but really you're just creating yourself a space that you have a job? Or are you looking to have a company that you grow and then you hire people to replace yourself in that business? And most often, those people are better, smarter than you anyway, right? So I was told in 2017 by a mentor of mine, I had done an entrepreneurial panel, and he looked at me at the end and he said, you're an entrepreneur hiding in a veterinarian's body. You should stop calling yourself a veterinarian, start calling yourself an entrepreneur. And that really resonated. My company was doing great. I had really worked hard on that, and we made a lot of progress in the business. I won't get into specifics of strategy, but it always is involving culture, customer service, increased offerings, that sort of thing. So it was in early 2018, I realized I wanted to grow my business, but without a new hospital or acquisitions, we couldn't really grow exponentially. So that's when I decided that I was going to do a second location. But there's only 168 hours in a week, and I was getting myself separated from working in the business. And so I realized that I needed to have a partner. So I reached out to one of the veterinarians that I worked with, and thankfully she said she'd be interested. So in 2019, we opened the East Hants Animal Hospital, and that was our second location. We did great. That took off. We started from 0 clients, and we grew very, very quickly. So in late 2019, I presented to my partner the idea that I think there are more underserviced areas in HRM, specifically the Halifax Peninsula and West Bedford. And this is through research on demographics, future growth, where the veterinarians were at the time, that sort of thing. And so she was on board and said, yeah, let's do it. Let's double our footprint. So in January of 2020, I bought some land on the peninsula for North End. And we're due to sign the lease for Bedford West in March of 2020. Everybody here knows March of 2020. That'll be forever in our brain. The world went sideways. We all know that. It was 2 weeks into the initial COVID lockdowns at the end of March, and that's when I needed to sign my 10-year lease agreement that had been negotiated with the landlord. And that's where I'm going to share my third lesson, which is to bet on yourself. So this book, You're Awesome, by Neil Pasricha, is a great read. And in it, he shares 2 questions when you're making a hard decision. And I use this on myself, and I share this with all of the entrepreneurs that I work with. So this is something that I had to do in 2020. Will I regret not doing this? What will I regret more in the future? Will I regret doing it, or will I regret not doing it? And you really need to think about that. And that's a gut check, right? The second one is, what is this going to look like if it fails, right? Break it down for me. Tell me the worst case scenario. This is how I put it to my entrepreneurs, right? Spell it out. Clients don't come, can't make payroll, you spiral it down. Most times in business, it's I run out of money, I go bankrupt. That's usually the worst case scenario. But you just have to think about those 2 questions. Will I regret it, and what's the worst case scenario? So I went through that in March of 2020 and decided that I was going to bet on myself. So signed the lease, continued with the purchase of the land, and we were like, okay, we're going to double our footprint. We just don't know what's going to happen in the world. It was all up in the air. But thankfully, we were designated an emergency service as veterinary hospitals, rightfully so. So through COVID, not sure what stage of life you guys were at, but as businesses, there were business winners, meaning you could stay open, you thrived, you grew, and there were business losers. So maybe I'll pick on the restaurants. Sadly, they got the short end of the stick there, right? They had to close, they suffered, they struggled. Our industry was a winner. We were able to stay open, and pandemic pets is a real thing. So lesson number 4 that I wanted to share. Do what others can't or won't. And this is really what set my path for my success today. In March, when the lockdowns were starting, the first leadership meeting that I had, this is the day that the borders were closed and we were told things are going to go crazy here. We tried to focus on a couple of things. 1, how can we keep all of the staff employed? And 2, how do we make sure that our customers and their patients get the care that they need, right? And that was our focus. We're making our decisions around those things. So a lot of quick changes. We don't need to get into the weeds, but things like parking lot medicine, no charge delivery service. We stock ordered medication that was starting to be hard to get in other countries that were months ahead of us. All kinds of those things. So we started doing that at our hospitals. We had two locations at the time. I worked in Eastern Passage, my partner worked in East Hants. 6 days a week, 13 hours a day, doing whatever we needed to do. As owners, it would have been easy for us to stay at home and say, you know what, we're scared, we're not going to go to work, we're going to shut down, we're going to close, we're going to take all the government money that's being offered. We went the opposite approach. Very quickly, we realized a lot of our competitors had done just that. They shortened their hours, they stopped offering surgeries, and their clients were desperate and they needed help. So In the span of 3 months, we doubled our staff, we hired people, and we expanded our service, expanded our hours. We did things like surgeries on the weekend to help people catch up because they weren't able to get in and do those sorts of things. So it really was a matter of just hustling harder. What did I need to do to get through the day? What did I need to do to support my business? What did I need to do to support my team so that they can support the business and the customers? Some days, the most important thing I could do was run food from the lobby to the parking lot. It was refilling the staplers, refilling the printers, it was answering the phone. It didn't matter. I would do whatever it took. So I just asked these questions, like, what is it that you are going to do that no one else is, that they can't or they won't? How are you hustling harder, right? So I think that is how you can often stand out in a crowd, and that's whether you own a business or you're working in a business. So for us, we were still working towards opening those 2 other locations at this crazy time as well. So it almost doubled our efforts of working in and on our businesses. We ended up opening Bedford Parks in March of 2021, delayed because of construction delays, but that's okay. It was supposed to be in 2020, and then North End Animal Hospital opened in August 21, so super busy. We had 2 hospitals open in 1 year. At that time, we, again, more than doubled our staff, so well over 100 people we employed at that time. And both hospitals, again, took up with a bang because there was still such pent-up supply from COVID and from all of the pets and the pets that needed care. So just talking about my industry a little bit, the veterinary industry. Over the last 8 to 10 years, there's been a lot of consolidation, a lot of sales, a lot of trading of businesses. And in the lead up to 2022, it had really ramped up because of how successful people were and how busy they were. We had been turning down any conversations or offers of purchase for many years at that time. And it was in the fall of 2021 through my network that I was introduced to some mergers and acquisitions accountants that I trusted. And they said, you really need to start thinking about this and take a meeting because of what's going on. We had created something special in our businesses. We were a well-organized, medium-sized company. We had a full management team. And we just didn't realize quite how valuable the business was, but then we said, okay, let's start digging into this. And so we did meet with mergers and acquisition specialists, and they put together a great package for us. And that's way outside my wheelhouse. I don't do the finance stuff, so having a trusted partner there was essential. And what we ended up doing was they went to market just to test the waters. Turns out it was a very smart thing to do. We had more offers than we could have wanted. So we almost were able to create what we wanted to have happen. Meaning, we didn't have to just take one offer. We were able to figure out what was important to us. So we were able to find a partner who was interested in actually us retaining ownership as a partner, us retaining operational control, and keeping our entire management team on board. So we had found a company that was in Canada, but had no presence in Atlantic Canada, but had a mandate to be here. So it was a perfect combination because we already had our management company here. So the timing couldn't have been better. It was June of 2022. We sold some shares. We merged all 4 hospitals that we owned. It allowed my business partner to buy into the Eastern Passage Hospital as well. And it allowed me to take some cash off the table, which was great. In 2022, all of us as partners bought Chester Basin Animal Hospital, so that was our 5th location. And then in April of this year, we actually opened a 6th location, Uniacke Lakes Animal Hospital. And every time that we added a new hospital, we added more management, and it allowed me to get more and more out of the business. And so 2023, I had more free time than I've ever had, which was great. I had been working so hard for so long, and then I found myself with like, okay, what do I do now? So I said, what does a type A personality do when they have more free time? We look for other things to do, other challenges. And this is where the story of the Halifax Tides starts. So it was in October of 2023, I was introduced to Miriam Zittner by a mentor of mine, who thought we should meet because we both have daughters who play soccer. And if anyone is a soccer fan, you might remember the Canadian national team played here on Halloween at the Wanderers grounds last year. So we were going to that game. I have two daughters who play soccer. My youngest is quite good, and that's all I knew. I knew soccer from driving them back and forth to soccer meets and games, but that's all that I ever knew. I met Miriam for coffee because it was recommended I meet her, and that definitely changed the trajectory of my professional career. She's the one who told me that Canada didn't have a national professional women's soccer league, right? So just to put it in perspective, the FIFA World Cup, 32 countries, 2 of those countries don't have professional national soccer leagues, Canada and Haiti. Everybody else has a professional national soccer league. Canada supplies the 3rd largest talent pool to women's soccer internationally. It's crazy that we didn't have a league. Come on, Canada, like, get yourself together here. So Diana Matheson, former professional soccer player on the Canadian national team, was trying to bring a league to Canada. And they had 5 other cities, major cities in Canada, that had signed on and were trying to get a team here in Atlantic Canada, specifically Halifax. So at the time, it was called Project 8. So I was introduced to Diana, I was introduced to Project 8. Miriam and a group of ladies locally had been meeting occasionally to see if they couldn't get something together to get a team here. So when I said to Miriam, I said, well, I'll help you. I wouldn't mind finding out more about this. So the 6 of us met for dinner one night, and I realized that what they needed was they needed somebody to put up their hand, and they needed somebody to say, I'll take the pen, I'll take the risk, and I'll take on the ownership. And that was in November of 2023. Now, remember, I had a great life. I was not working too hard, had the hospitals that were running themselves. So here's my next lesson for you. If you aren't uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I do truly believe this. I was pretty darn comfortable at the time, so I think it was time for me to challenge myself again. Being uncomfortable does have a negative connotation, but if you think about any time that you've made personal improvement, you've had to be uncomfortable to do it, whether it's in business or whether it's physically with a challenge, right? So for me, I needed to push myself outside my comfort zone and say, well, I want to learn more about this. And once I did learn more about it, because I didn't know anything about the sports field, I realized there's some great opportunities here. And I ended up saying to myself, why not me, right? If not me, then who? And a few people will have heard me say, what, are we sitting around waiting for some man to do this? So I ended up doing it. I signed the letter of intent, and I bought the rights to the team in Halifax. So I like to say to people, what opportunities are you missing out on because you don't want to be uncomfortable, right? Hard conversations, hard decisions, physical challenges, improving yourself. It was mentioned several times by people in the introductions. Go outside your comfort zone, right? It's hard to go up to a stranger and introduce yourself or ask a question. It's very hard to walk into a room where you don't know anyone. Imposter syndrome is real, and it takes a long time to not feel imposter syndrome. The first time I walked into an entrepreneur organization event in 2014, I thought, I do not belong here. These people know what they're doing in business, and I do not. But definitely, you have to be uncomfortable to grow. So I signed the LOI in December of 2023. I was actually in Chile, South America, about to get on a plane to go to Antarctica to run the marathon down there. And then 2 days later, flew back to Chile, did another marathon, because I'm working on a goal to do a marathon on each continent in the world, because, you know, that's what you do. And what we did since I got back from that trip, in January is we've created the Halifax Tides Football Club. And hopefully most of you have heard of that, but that is going to be the professional women's soccer team that plays here in Halifax, and we're going to start in April. So right away when I got back, the priority was to hire great people. I can't do it alone. I don't have the time, nor did I want to take the time. I wanted to find people way smarter than me, knew what they were doing, and were going to be able to fill that. So I started hiring in February. We now have 13 employees, and we have started our season ticket deposits. We've got a full merch line. We just announced our first player yesterday, so if there's any soccer fans, they might have seen that. And we are just working ourselves like crazy to bring this across the line, but I'm feeling great about it because I have such a fantastic team doing that. Starting the professional women's soccer club is really, for me, the perfect marriage of business opportunity that I do think will be a great investment of time and money, but also it's the right thing to do. How do we not have a professional women's soccer team? And we should not have a national soccer league in Canada and not have Atlantic Canada represented. This is the opportunity for our girls, our women, to see this as a place that they can grow to, where they can join and they can play soccer. So for me, this is another startup, right? I'm just starting it from scratch the same way I did the veterinary hospital. And I just love that I can take on more of an advisory role because I've got such a great team that's building this for me, and they know everything there is to know about soccer and sports that I don't know. So I am going to leave you today with one of my favorite quotes. I had this as a screensaver for 10 years on my computer, but I think it applies to entrepreneurship and to life. Entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time today.